Okay.
I am Niveditha.indrajit and I'm in conversation with Geeta Goti. And we worked together in my first job. And I've always admired you when you would walk around. And the introduction I was given about you was she's the legal person. Yeah, like, so for me in my head is like, oh wow. I mean, it's like, for me, it's like right out of the legal, the court battles and stuff like that. And with reading a lot of Perry Mason and all that, my idea of legal is like, very glamorous. Although I think your work has to do a lot more with compliance and stuff like that also.
Yeah,
so did you always think that you will do this in your life, or when you were a little child, you had other ideas?
Yeah, as a little child, I used to read Perry Mason as well. But what fascinated me as a little child is I was a very curious child, a very calm, curious child, and who would attract attention of people who are much older than the child itself. So, so that led me into a lot of deeper conversations with people around, or even listening, not even having conversation, but just listening. You have your grandmother's friends, and you have someone who's 10 years older as a neighbor, and you get into that circle. So what was happening around me at that time is I love to have conversation. I love to go around, meet people, and all that. So, but I wasn't a talkative person, very reserved, but enjoyed the company of people and did little errands for people around. So I got good recognition as a good child, you know. So that made me going. When I
Okay.
look back, I feel that was I doing it all for recognition as a good child? I mean, could have been. It sounds very funny, but so the curiosity and to connect with people. So when I was connecting with people, it was always the empathy part which was coming in, and also deducting the logic from emotions, and why someone behaved like this in a situation like this, and why someone else behaved totally different in a situation. So I would go with someone who is little rebellious protagonist and all that. I would admire them more than someone who is sulking and sympathy, looking for sympathy and all.
Okay.
So, and the issues among women, any age group, we're always surrounded by domestic issues, uh, survival issues, relationship issues. So I was drawn into all these things right from, let's say, 6, 7 years old. So maybe that has shaped me. I don't know, the curiosity to be around with people and things.
Yeah, the work that you do is also about empowering of women and all that, right? Like when I met you, you were with Kovi.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, after a long gap, we met, and then
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, it has impacted the way you look at things. So, how did you choose your education? Like, I mean, in the time and age where there are only doctors, engineers.
Oh yeah, yeah. So my father was in the medical field, and he always dreamed that I should be a doctor. So I was put into an intermediate with a BPC,
Okay.
which I didn't do well. I was a second class pass out. By that time, I was deciding that medicine is not my field. Though I was fascinated, probably if I got a seat, I would have gone, but I didn't get a seat with my marks and my acumen. And I never prepared for exams. It was like one day before I read and go and write and get good marks, average student. And nobody demanded me of a great rank at home. Um, so medicine was something which people wanted me to, but I couldn't get. So I joined. So in the graduation after intermediate, I was put into BSc Nutrition, Applied Sciences, Applied Nutrition, something like that. Day one, I went to the college, joined the course, Koti Women's College. Yeah, Hyderabad. So I joined, and the class next was BA Psychology. So my attention was on not on nutrition, my attention was on psychology, and a couple of my classmates in intermediate were in that class. So I just moved into that class. That's it. And when the lady, when the principal and others asked, why are you sitting in this class? This is a BA class, not a BSc class. Then I said, see, I have a liking for this subject. I would like to change. Then they said, you have to ask somebody has to sign that from shifting from one branch to the other branch. So then I said, nobody in my house would allow this, but I have a passion for this. Then I came back, I told my dad, so there is a subject called English literature, sociology, and psychology. I didn't say there's a subject called psychology. The group itself was English literature, psychology, sociology. So my father said, okay, English literature, at least you will be an English lecturer. So I said, okay, take that if you want, if you're not interested in sciences. So I moved in.
Very
And
clever.
no, at that time it just worked. People around me, my peer group was giving me all ideas what to do,
Yeah,
uh, what clicks
that
they
is,
knew. Yeah, so typically those in those days, parents either they would look at a professional course of medicine or something to do with the health sciences or education. So
yeah,
it was either of that. A girl should settle down in these kind of professions.
yeah.
And so coming from a convent school and all, they thought, okay, English would be good. But my English was very bad, not good. In fact, in intermediate, I got huge scoldings for not writing good English prose. So next year, I was in English literature. So that's the drastic thing. So, so your question on why did I choose this? So this was a accident. This was a choice I made at that time
Yeah.
to be in this field.
Mm.
And what happened after BA was again interesting. So my father expected I would do MA English literature. I did write the entrance. I did not get good marks. Then I got in MA psychology. So I that was in the second list I got. By that time, I also wrote masters in social work.
Okay.
That also accident again. One of my friend was writing for TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and she said there's some course like this. So I decided, okay, let me also try this MSW in Hyderabad Usmania University. So I went, I wrote the exam, and before I got the results of MS Psychology, MSW results came, and I was in the first two. I think the second rank in the university, something like that.
Mm.
uh, it was like overwhelming for me. I mean, I never expected. And then I went to my sociology teacher, lecturer, BA sociology, Shaukat ma'am. I asked her, see, I got an MSW and I'm looking for MS psychology. Maybe in the second list I will get. Then she said, what you will do in MS psychology? There's nothing. You will be sitting in a room and working. If it's MSW, you would go out, go into the field, talk to people, and you have more practical experience. Field work is there in social work. And
Yeah.
she went on to say, one of my old students has taken up MSW and she's a lecturer in so and so college. So I think you should do that than this. This is more of a if you want to transition into a lecturer, probably you can do MS psychology. But if you want to apply this on the field, then MSW.
Okay.
Immediate. I jumped in. I said, okay, I don't want to be in one place and do the same thing every day. So I moved in to MSW, and that has changed a lot. And it was like, a fish put in a water kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I felt was made for.
Yeah. It's a very
So
gentle nudging into that space where you actually belong.
yeah, I think somewhere, things were working around me to push me into that field. And then my friend from Tata Institute also got an MSW in TISS. So we had something in common to discuss. And I was always feeling bad that I didn't write Tata Institute. I didn't write that exam. And again, why I didn't write the exam? By that time in the house, they were discussing about my marriage, and they also zeroed down on so and so and all that. The person is very much stationed in Hyderabad, and imagine I go and sit in Bombay after marriage. They may not agree. I didn't even tell anybody. I just thought, okay, this won't work. So I didn't do. So that regret was there. I didn't go to Tata Institute of Social. I could have gone kind of.
So, how did marriage change the whole proposition? Did it change?
Yeah. So I had to put my uh, study into practice right from my home, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Marriage did change a lot. Um, okay, so when I got married, I was in the first year of PG, social work. And I got married in June. And next year, December, I was having my first baby. That's when I moved into the second year,
Okay.
June to June. So college people have written off my what you call studentship, saying that, oh, she got married. And someone said, why should she get married now when she's in college? And one of the lecturers said, you have been impulsive to get married. I said, what is impulsive being getting married? So I was labeled as someone who would go into a housework and she's no good. Even my marks went down because people started perceiving me as someone who's not a academic person, who doesn't need this degree. I don't know why she's doing this degree, kind of a thing. But if you ask students who were there at that time in my college, my juniors, my seniors, they just tell me, when I ask them, so how was I in college? They said, you were always in the library. You were the only one seriously studying. And I don't know why my lecturers and people who need to look at me and my potential were actually perceiving me as someone who will not go far, kind of a thing. So much so in my second year, when I got very less marks, I went and asked my principal. I said, how can you give me so less marks when I've did so well? So he said, what you will do? You will go and cook. That's it. Why do you need marks? Look at that the person. She is like striving, and she comes with so much of energy to work. I would rather give more marks to her because she's also equally good. I didn't like that dialogue at all. And I was very angry with that guy, my principal, and I said, okay, I can't do much if that is your perception.
Yeah.
But I didn't fight. I'm not a fighting kind of a person, but I just walked away and I felt very bad. But still, I studied my second year and I got, again, second class marks, which I was okay. I was not looking at a topping kind of a thing, but second class was okay, 58%. And I passed. And so, again, in second year, we had an elective between labor law and personal management and social work, psychiatric social work, community development. That all is one set, and industrial work is another set. So industrial option was given to top 5 students. I was in the top 5. And we had some guys in the college, I mean my male students in my class. We were just 12 students, and 4 were girls and another 8 were boys, and 2 boys who did not get through in the top 4 list were about to opt for the social work and social development, which had a set of medical and psychiatry, correctional, and typically community based work. So one of the guys came up and told, I'm dropping off the class because my aim was to become a personal manager and be in industry, and I didn't get that, so I'm dropping off. So I tried to tell him, see, you can still do it outside if you want. Why are you dropping out from a PG course? And I knew that he was not economically very strong. He had to study to get, and coming to that level also, it was very difficult in that family where he came from. And he was also working and studying at that time. So I understood that the need for him. So then he came back and said, if one of you drop, then probably I will get it. So I had a decision to make there. Not that because people have written me off as not a great student, doesn't need to study, but more like, okay, so if I do the other course, medical and psychiatry, which I also had interest, I said, okay, let me shift to that and give this option to this guy. Let him be around and complete the course. So I wrote saying that I'm opting out of this course and going to the other course, and he got the seat there. So I missed being in industry, being in thing. But what happened is when I picked up the other subjects, I got so interested in that subject, the psychiatric social work especially. And
Mm.
we used to have field work every other day.
Yeah.
Alternate days we would be sent to the field. So luckily I got my field work under Dr. Usha Nayak. She was a child psychiatrist in Nilofer Hospital.
Okay.
So my job was go early in the morning, 7 o'clock outpatient time, go there, sit there and write the patient histories for her, because doctor will not have a lot of time to have huge conversation, and it's a government hospital. There used to be loads of people outside. So I used to take the history, patient history. So I developed a pro forma and took the history. And in social work, the beauty is you are made to write reports,
Mm.
case studies, group
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
it's all part of it. It's a beautiful course. So I was there and I was doing the case studies. I was writing for her, and then we did an intervention with Down syndrome children, and there was a small play school with only retarded children, and so I used to go sit there and do the stories of theirs, talk to the parents. Then we decided we should come out with some or what you call a book for the mothers, how to handle children. So we decided to work, and then we also had a lot of visitors at that time to Nilofer on this particular studies which the hospital was doing as part of a research. So I was nowhere in that, but I was just helping Madam Dr. Usha Nayak. So I got to see a huge different world there, all about psychiatric social work, all about mm, families, which kind of families. Generally, poor people would come to Nilofer Hospital. And so I saw a variety of cases, spastic cases, Down syndromes. We had very interesting. Even today, I remember the names of some children uh, whose cases I have written, or I used to do home visits, and I used to meet the parents. I used to go into those small uh, hamlets, kind of a place surrounding Hyderabad, to do the cases. So she took interest in me, and we both. Imagine I was in the first year of PG, and I had my publication along with
Awesome.
her. Nobody would have believed that. So we both wrote on in a couple of conferences. I accompanied her and I helped her to make the presentations. Then my name was written in the book. It was a high time for me. I mean, everybody. So I went back to college and said, "Look, none of the students have this. I have this." I didn't say it to anybody, but my one of my lecturers said, "Oh, that's great. At college level, you have a publication." So that had kicked me in, and then I got married. But still, I continued with all this. With marriage, responsibilities grew. I went into a family where women were not educated for earning. Neither they were educated for enlightenment or empowerment. Nothing. They were just existing kind. They were doing good, dutiful housewives and sisters, mothers, sorry, sisters-in-law. So I was the odd man out,
Mm.
and with all my schedules of visits, schedules of meeting people, it was very odd for them to accept me. Very difficult for them to accept me. So interpersonal relations, strained relations, and again you get to be perceived as somebody because of your background, because of the way you are dealing with others. So my day would start very early, do the household work, then go to college. I was in the second year, so then I had a baby. So it was very difficult. But then it didn't sound so difficult when I look back now, because I was engrossed in my studies. I was engrossed with Dr. Usha Naik's work. Then somebody else in the college, one professor, he gave me some work on tribal related work, because my course also had rural development. So he gave me a book one day which was published by some UNO kind of a report.
Mm.
It talked about 7% scenario. I still remember the page of that book. 7% scenario, which talked only about the 7% population who are tribals in India and what is their status. And this is in 1987-88 when I was doing my PG.
I was in
So,
standard.
so after reading that report, I was so moved. I said, I mean, we don't even know those people existed, and they don't have any facilities. They talked about their health and all that. Typically, a UN report will talk about very
Yeah.
statistical kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And then I decided, okay, if it's not medical and psychiatry, I would go into rural development, community development. Then the second year, we had to change the field work. First year was the setting of a psychiatric setting. Second year, I was put into correctional social work. It was in Chanchalguda jail. Okay, so I visited very few times that place. Um, so my job was to talk to the women prisoners, and then again case studies, reports, and what hit me there was all of them were sitting idle, doing nothing. One is they had some skill related trainings there, but they were not interested because everybody thought they will leave next day, so they don't need to. They didn't want to enroll. That was one decision they made up. Some other women and prisoners were very stubborn. They said, "Why are we going to learn? We don't want to learn. Whatever the prison gives, we'll not do." Okay, that kind of thing. And the third category was totally mentally deranged, kind, mentally ill because of the circumstances they came in. So, but then while I was visiting this place and all, and somewhere I was drawn into looking at the income generation of people. So if they leave from this place, where will they go? They have to have some sort of a skill so that they go out and earn.
Yeah.
So they already, I mean, prison already had some sewing centers and all that. They were trying to establish that. So I was part of that project for some time. Then my fieldwork was, I was pulled out of the correctional social work, and by that time this tribal thing was going on. So I was put into a community development project in near Balanagar Industrial Estate.
No,
Again,
very
work.
brave, huh? It takes a lot of courage to just weave through all this and choose and
More than brave, I think it's the curiosity and want to see what else kind of
yeah,
attitude.
under the circumstances where there is also interpersonal opposition at home and stuff,
Oh
and
yeah, major it
at
was.
the
In
same
fact,
time, acknowledging that you're different and doing
mm,
that.
yeah, for my in-laws, they knew that I'm good in education. So my father-in-law was a banker. Somewhere decided that I'll become a banker. So he thought I will start writing all the banking exams and then be a banker somewhere, be a clerk, be something. But he always used to ask, very innocently, very nice person. He would ask, "So, are you preparing for banking exams?"
And
So
here you
I
are,
was.
Chanchalguda, and
They didn't know what I was doing. They could not even comprehend what study I am doing. So when I was going to the Nilafore hospital, somebody asked my mother-in-law what does she study? Okay, because I'm going from their house to college. So she said, I don't know, but she goes to a hospital. Maybe she's doing nursing course. So, I
so
mean,
how did you work with the income generation part of it with these women?
yeah. So we had workers education center. Then we had some skill training institutes like Setwin and all. So I moved around, collected that information, and gave it to the warden, jail warden. At that time, there was a very nice lady, and she was also very enterprising. She said, "Let's do something different for these people." There was a lot of empathy there. There was so it was an environment where they were trying to correct the behaviors. And we also had a very different kind of women prisoners who were brought in. There were people who were, into what you call extreme violence. Um, there were people who were framed as Naxalites and brought in. I was actually facing the tribals, some of the tribals who were picked up as Naxalites and brought there. Uh, so, so then I was not much. I worked in correctional social work. For some reason, I moved into this side of the project. Um, so in the community development, there was this near Feroz Nagar, Balanagar, there was one community called Gautam Nagar, which had a lot of people who were coming from villages as migrants and staying there and working in the industries around that Balanagar. So the conditions of the slum, it was a slum, was very bad. And there was a leader, community leader, I think his name Sardar Khan or some name, I don't recall fully. He was a very nice guy and in his way, very illiterate guy. But what he did is he had a row of huts which he rented out. And he would talk about women emancipation. He would talk about take some classes for our women. They're all sitting idle. He used to scold any girl, lady sitting idle and say, do something, why you are not doing. And so again, this income generation activity which I was working on, I started there. So along with me, there was another classmate. Both of us were there in that community development project. So we did some activity around that. Uh, so I mean, somewhere women empowerment was shaping in at that time. And so I passed out of MSW. I did 2 research papers by that time, along with others, not independent, but along with others. So that gained little attention from the faculty, say, feeling that, okay, now you can go for your PhD kind of a thing.
Okay.
But back home, things were going bad. Uh, there was a time when the entire household was at one and I was on the other side, and matters became worse. It was sibling rivalry, I could see, but I couldn't do anything. 5 brothers, and one brother's wife is going out studying and working and uh, getting some attention. So other 3 will not keep quiet. No? They say, oh, are we there only to do kitchen work? Are we there only to do this work? Where is that lady? Where is she? Though I was doing, but it was not considered as work. It was considered as work when you stay put at home and do what you have to do, not when you go out. So you are getting an extra kind of attention. So we had to move out. It was not a pleasant move, a very violent one, because my husband was beaten up. Then there was nobody supporting me in that community at that time. Not even a single household person came out to help us. Things were thrown out and all. It was very painful. So we moved to my mom's place. So because in the middle of the night we can't go anywhere. So and it was so funny that one of my very close relatives, my mom's aunt, was next door neighbor. She just shut her gates, saying that please don't come into my house because your brothers-in-law, who are all there, they might come into my house and beat up us. It was in the night. I said, okay. So I understood, the person whom you think you would trust will not give in the time when their lives are in danger, because they were ruffians. They would have beaten them up also if they gave me shelter. But anyway, next day I went and complained in the police station, harassment and all that stuff. So it became a little more aggravated because I went to the police station. I said, how can she go to the police station and all that? After that, my dad intervened and he said, enough is enough. Just come back. And at that time, I didn't know even my husband would come with me because I complained against his family. But then he came.
Hmm.
He was with me. So we came to my mom's place and stayed there. So I got my job when I was with my in-laws only. My first job was in Mirial. I had my baby and he was 2 months old. Then I got this campus selection. UNICEF has offered me a job to work in
Wow.
Mirial municipality. And this is something I was looking forward to, the tribal welfare kind of a thing. So I went there. I joined. He was 2 months old. I left him in my mom's place. And actually that has created a problem in my in-laws house, that I did not ask them that can they take care of my child, because somewhere I didn't believe that they would, because all that time they were only complaining on me. I didn't want that. So my son was 5 months old, I think. Then I moved out of Miryalguda. I did a very good job there. I feel very comfortable talking about it, because within 5 months, um, we had some 21 slums developed with a community hall, with a bore for water, common water. Then we had public toilets.
Mm.
I mean, I always look back and say, in 5 months, I could do that. And I was never in the office, always on the field. And I had another colleague who was also a master's in social work. Both of us would go on the field and do all these things. Even today, I remember the corporator of Miryalguda at that time was a tribal. And he came one day, and somehow he didn't like so much of work happening around, I think, or he was not getting the at that time. I see, again, the learning I got from that job is I didn't bother about anybody else around me. I just went on doing what I think was right. I
Mm.
was doing income generation activities for women in the slum. I was doing Anganwadi teachers, supporting them, or supporting the sewing teachers, community development work. These were all paid by the government only, as per the UNICEF project.
Yeah.
But they were not grounded because there was no supervision. So
Mm.
when I went in, everything was falling in place. And I also started going with them and sitting with them and doing work, and somehow I forgot to acknowledge who were there before me, this
Mm.
corporator and the engineers, and the what you call basti level workers.
Mm.
Probably I didn't acknowledge them, so I got some hostility. And then slowly, things started. I mean, everybody started putting some spokes in it, like, the reports were not going to the. I was reporting to joint collector at that time in Nalgonda. They
Mm.
were not going there because these guys have to sign and send it. And then I realized, okay, winds are not on my side. So
There is a bit of red tape, isn't there?
not right. I mean, when I look back, I should have acknowledged them. Probably I
Yeah.
should have taken them along with me where I went. I
Yeah.
was doing is like my work I will do, kind of, which was, I mean, that's my learning.
Yeah.
And so it's 5 months. My child was not keeping well, and somewhere I also felt I should go back to my house. So I came back, and when I was still in my in-laws' house at that time. So then there was an advertisement of medical social worker required in Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences.
Mm.
So I applied, I got it there. And so I joined them. Then I used to go from my in-laws' house to the office and then come back. And my child was with my mom at that time. Um, I knew that the kind of hostility was going around in my house because I was working, and there was a lot of a feeling that we allowed her to study and she is working, and now she has to pay us back, kind of a discussions. I would have paid. I didn't bother about money at all. My work was something which I was enjoying. But my husband said, why should I? He's already giving his salary to the house, the entire salary. Not that he was earning very great, but he was giving. So he said, I don't want you to also give. And only two of us were in the house, not children and all. Somewhere, that equation didn't work, and things didn't go well, and the brothers started humiliating him. And typically you do what you do to harass somebody is you will not give water, you will not you'll lock up the stuff around, and you will ensure that their mobility is constrained in the house. And this was not going on. So when he questioned, he was beaten up. So that's when I went to the police and put a case of harassment on all of them. And then I moved out of that place. So that thing is still there with them. My mother-in-law, my father. My father-in-law was by that time suffering with Parkinson's disease,
Mm.
and so he was not in the scene at all. My mother-in-law under influence of my brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law. It's a big family. So, and her own sister. All these people pounced on me, and so I said, okay, enough is enough, and we moved out. So after that, I still started working with Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences. From there, I used to go from my mom's house. Then I had my second baby, my daughter. So when I was in Nizam's Institute, the day one work I was given is to sit in the reception and write chits for illiterate patients. What is their name, age, and what is the element, and then give the chit so that they go and take the card from the counter. And that is the understanding of Nizam's Institute administration for a professional social work. There was another lady also who was also a professional social worker. She was also doing medical and psychiatric social work. For some reason, even she was doing that job. And there was a lot of power in that job. You sit in the outpatient day, early morning, 7:30, and then you have patients walking in, and there's a lot of shouting, screaming, and you take advantage of checking their white ration cards. Those times, I think pink ration cards they used to have, and see whether they are really poor. If they are poor, then say poor, and then they don't get to pay in the counter. That's not professional social work. So it was pinching me that to do that job. So one day I went up and asked Dr. Kakarla Subbarao, who is the director. I said, sir, I don't think I'm doing what I've studied. And they don't have a psychiatric department. There was an external doctors coming and helping the doctors in psychiatric counseling, assessment. Then he said, okay, you can go and sit with the psychiatrist. Dr. Shankarnath Wagre was there. So I used to sit again, the case study kind of a work I was given, and it was somewhat enriching. But the other work was already there. Sometimes I would also get a request like, there's a doctor, we need to call him on the pager, announcement, public announcement. So I was told, you have a beautiful voice, so why don't you, go and do the paging. So wherever I am, whether I'm having my lunch or when I'm sitting with someone and discussing a case or anything, I would get the call and say, you have to do some paging work here. Then I realized this is something which nobody wants to do. And they would call me for that. So I said, I am busy. After some time, I went on to say, I'm busy. Anybody can do paging. You don't need a beautiful voice in a hospital. You can do page. So there were a lot of other funny incidents which happened around us social workers, but then I decided this has to change. For a posting in emergency services, and again, my job was to counsel patients who have met with an accident, and then somebody who was having a critical case, and the prognosis is very bad. So it was more of a family counseling, giving the bad news, or talking to them about where to get the blood donation, where to get funding medicines. A lot of activity. It has led to starting a social work department in that hospital. Very soon, every department, like I was with the emergency department, then I went into oncology department. For some time, I was in neurology. So everywhere, doctors said, we also need a social worker to help us. There's so much of load of patients, and there's so much you can do as a social worker in a big hospital, research hospital. So I also did some research with one neurosurgeon, Dr. Purohit. We worked on spasticity. You remember my work with Dr. Usha Nayak was on Down syndrome. Yeah. So here it was on spasticity. There was a famous surgeon who visited us, Dr. Peacock. So there were a lot of surgeries happening at that time. So rhizotomy was the name of that surgery. Then I worked on a small research paper with a rheumatologist. Rheumatology was a new kind of a wing coming in the hospital. Then I started something called crisis counseling, where you have all these accident victims coming in, accident cases go into medical legal cases, all that. So the first brush of legal was in the hospital. till that time, legal thing was never in my head.
Okay.
So, so after NIMS, while I was working in NIMS, I did a huge campaign in the cancer department about smoking. You shouldn't be smoking, and I did a lot of. In those days, we used to
Banners,
do posters
posters.
and campaigns, designed everything, and the doctors also felt okay. We got some activity around the department, and department got some attention, and then I did a little bit of work on the newsletter about the names and all that. So while that was happening, one day I saw an advertisement. Okay, what was happening then is when I was in oncology department, my daughter was 2 years old, I think, one year or 2 years old. I delivered her when I was working with NIMS, and along with me there were a lot of nurses who were having small babies and they had to leave and come. So I um, I was part of the union activities as well at that time. So I went up. Dr. Raja Reddy was the director at that time, and I said there was one more lady, Dr. Malati. She was from the biochemistry department. She just came from Germany, and she set up this biochemistry department, and she was heading. And she somewhere we had a discussion about how about having a creche for our nurses and doctors, children. Everybody was around age of 30s, early 30s. So they all had small babies. So we went up and spoke to Dr. Raja Reddy, and he said, yeah, but then I don't want that in the hospital premises. So you should have a separate kind of a place. So we scouted and we found a building which is closer to the hospital, and then we spoke to the landlord, and union also got involved, and then we opened a 24/7 creche there.
So I love this.
This was in 1989.
Wow.
And then the minister was Mr. Roshaya. So he came and inaugurated that. And to scout a person to run the creche also, again, I had to go around the city and find out where all the organizations had creche. And I picked up one person from AG's office. She was running a creche there. So she was supported by an NGO. Then, so we said it's a contractual thing. We'll give you this amount every month, and you have to take care of these things. So in the first year, we had 30 children. My daughter was also part of that creche. Uh, so that is one achievement I would see that could have made a big business had I followed that. Because that creche lady was always telling me, let's go to other offices and check with them. Let's go to other hospitals and check with them. But my work was totally different. And I was working with the spastics then. And I also did one paper with Dr. Purohit. Again, we went out to do the presentations, all that. And I had another couple of my classmates who came in and joined as social workers. So my work was totally, it was never an enterprise or a business or anything. It was more of social work, and you get paid by the government, so you better work kind of a thing. So we did a lot of counseling work. My interest was in psychiatric counseling, and my interest was in getting donors. Interestingly, that time LV Prasad Eye Institute came up, and they were looking for eye donors. So that education was happening. There was a lady who would come and sit there and talk to the families when the patient is severely ill, and educate them that they should donate the eyes. So I used to sit with her and talk to the patients and help them. Then this cancer department where I was working was actually taking off my what you call professional work sometimes has an occupational
Hazard.
I won't say hazard, but occupational challenge.
Okay.
Which would say um, like every day I would go up and I know somebody is won't be there next day because of everybody's conversations there, and also I am sitting with the family and telling them it's over, and counseling the patient also. Then you have to now start looking at differently, their life kind of thing. Somebody is amputated, somebody is having a issue with the chemotherapy, so every day my life was post my delivery. When I moved back, I was given the cancer department work. Was very painful, and it was so ingrained in me that back home, when somebody came and my daughter was sick or when my son was not keeping well, they were looking very small to me, issues. And I was thinking somebody else will take care of this. I lost that what you call
Respect.
empathy
Empathy.
for people around me, because all my empathy was drained out somewhere else, which I thought was a professional work. And my father recognized it. He's from a medical field. He said, "You are going through an emotional catharsis. You're not seeing what is obvious. You're taking too much in." Like I would come and talk to my husband about a boy called Chand Basha. He had what you call uh, a reaction because of a blood transfusion, and I would tell that entire story. And my listening with my husband was poor because he was trying to tell me that, let's do this, or children and all that. So when you go with a gloomy and sad story, people around you also start going through that feeling.
Yeah.
So that's what was happening to me. Maybe I would have been alert and done something about it. So it was affecting me. So that's when I saw this advertisement from VST Industries looking for a social worker. VST Industries was just next door to where I was staying, whereas my Nizam's Institute was almost 2 hours journey in those days in the bus, public transport. So this looked very attractive. So I applied, and 40 people applied. We had 3-4 rounds of interviews, and then finally two of us I got selected, and one more lady got selected. She is from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Then she didn't take up that offer. I took the offer, she didn't take. And everywhere I was going, I said, look, 40 people got called and 3 rounds, and then I got selected. And the chairman of VST at I think he was Dr. Ravi Bhutlingam, HR head actually he was, and he moved to a business head role. And I was thinking, oh good, Ravi Bhutlingam, I heard about him and all. Then I realized within no time there was another lady who joined. And she joined just because somebody called somebody and she got the job. I said, what's the fun? You go through several rounds and then somewhere, I felt hurt. I said, oh God, this happens here also in private organizations. Anyway, but I liked that job. 4 years I was there, and we did a lot of work. Even that the other lady, her name is Lata. So we had these names very rhyming, Geeta Lata, wherever we are going, Geeta Lata, kind of. And so what we did, we worked with the families of the workers. They had their own colonies. And one was in Nacharam, one was in Mushirabad. So again, my income generation activity kicked in. So all my contacts of industries department and income generation, Setwin and all, I activated all those, and then brought some skill activities at the Basti level to the women. And they started, encouraging their women folk to learn some art or skill to gain additional income to the family. And VST had a very peculiar culture of taking in the son of the retiring employee as an employee. It's son of the soil kind of model employment. So, and their jobs was cigarette making. Imagine in the hospital, I was telling everybody not to smoke and all smoking is bad. And then here I am working for a cigarette company. And so my job was to ensure that the families are living in a better status, because when VST was giving very good salaries to the workers, most of them are illiterate, and for them extra money means extra families. So
Oh.
you would have one guy having more than one wife.
Oh,
because
interesting.
extra money, and then they would go in. And so there used to be a fight between which son of which mother would come into the job after this guy pops out or retires. uh, that was interesting.
Interesting.
So what happened is when one set of new joiners came, I started looking at their profiles, and in fact that was a talk around also, that a guy who is no good for anything, who doesn't go to school, who doesn't study, who has bad habits, who has vices, who is into bad company and smoke or alcohol, would get a job in waste, because father is retiring, son gets a job. Most of the cases
Like a
had
legacy or something.
legacy. Yeah. So you have this new set of workers coming into the organization who are not so good in their potential using their potential. They are already, you know, given, and they were getting good salaries. So they are the guys who were attracted by girls and families of girls to give away in marriage just because this guy has a job in VST. No
Mm.
other credentials. So there was a particular problem going through it, and there was a huge absenteeism. 16% was the absenteeism. And why? Because there were a lot of single digit lottery centers around that area. There were a lot
Okay.
of theaters. There were a lot of theaters around that area.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
RTC
RTC
Crossroads.
Crossroads. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
one. There are many theaters.
Many theaters. So these boys would just walk away from the office and go into a theater, go into a single digit lottery center, uh, throw the money, or just have fun with girls around, and then all this thing. And then we used to have some couple of times police visit our office asking, there's so and so who has done some mischief, and then pick them up and go. Or you would have a lady with two children standing at the gate asking, is my husband coming to office? So you would find out that that lady is not an official wife then. So these were the issues we were handling in the sense we are coming across. So what could be the solution to this? Then we realized we have to educate the women, and we should also nurture the children who are in school, or at least coming out of school. So we did some career coaching for the kids so that they get into a college and they do a decent study education so that they don't come back to the work here.
Mm.
Then we also had income generation activities for women so that they start earning and feeling. There are a lot of domestic violence cases at that time, and so we would help them to feel empowered and give them whatever required so that they start their own. So we have registered few women welfare societies where they were the members. So we would give them a recognition, not we, but they would get, because they registered a society. There's a president, there is a secretary. So that was falling in place, and there were some income generation activities. We used to have competition. So my job was not inside the company, my job was outside. Most of the time we conducted spoken English classes for workers. We conducted MSET coaching classes for the children. Then we used to have first time in the history of VST, we had families visiting every Saturday. 5 families were invited. They would get an invitation from HR department saying you are invited to visit the factory. So the families would come. It was like a festival. They would come up dressed up, and then in the canteen we used to have a separate area where we had nice white cloth put on the tables, then with a lot of flowers and all. They would be served snacks, evening snacks. So that made people. Why did we do that? We wanted families to see where their men are working. That feeling of VST is a huge company, great company, and all that is what they heard, but they haven't seen it.
Mm.
So we did that. So every Saturday, my job was getting these invitations done, calling up people and say, "Are you coming?" It was like calling to my personal some ceremony in my house kind of a thing. And when they walk in, you are there at the gate. and then you take them around the factory, the floor, and they get to see where their father is working. They get to see where the husband is working. In fact, I got a request that can we get the neighbors also? I said no, only family. So, so this was going on, something different, and it gave a lot of respect. Um, and when there was, I think there was a position of a welfare officer. Okay, during this time, I was looking into the aspects of union, not as a role or anything. My interest in union activities, my interest in how do they do negotiations, and I was part of the HR team sitting and talking about this. And there were two guys who were from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, who were either seniors or juniors of my friend, and so I got to know them. And so there my HR interest started growing. So I looked everything as, oh, it's just like social work, it's just like social work. Only this much I need to know. So I enrolled myself in a law college, evening college,
Okay.
because this union activities and all, somewhere I felt you should know law.
Hmm.
So I went, I enrolled, and I cleared law exam. Then there was a diploma in industrial relations and personal management offered in the evening by the same college, my old college. It was affiliated to Usman University. So I started attending those classes. And so what I missed in my college, that um, IRPM course which I gave to a boy there,
Yeah.
I completed it. I topped the class.
Awesome.
Then I did my law. And so when I was writing my law exams, I would take my daughter with my husband. My center was outside the city, so he would accompany me whenever I'm writing exams. So she was 1 year old or something like that, or 2 years old. So I mean, this is how the journey into law happened.
Hmm.
I never used any legal stuff after that. That
Okay.
industrial relations, that's it. And I understood what is labor laws. Being in a factory, in a manufacturing industry, and being in HR department, you get to know a lot. You
Yeah.
don't need to do anything, but the environment itself teaches you. We had somebody working on TQM.
Hmm.
So my job was also into supervisory training for workers.
Hmm.
So I would not take the classes, but I will ensure that they get into the class, they are there and all that. So I was sitting in the class, all the TQM knowledge I was getting.
Hmm.
And then there was something called performance management appraisal. Somebody
Yeah.
designed it. And you get to see large consulting firms coming into a big factory like VST was part of ITC.
Hmm.
Okay. So you get to see all these trainings happening, and you get to see the material, you get to listen to people around. So I knew what was grid consultants doing. I was aware about what the BT Nurse was doing. I was aware about what the Hewitt consultants were doing. So there's so much of
Knowledge
things
coming and pouring in.
you're absorbing. And then about union negotiations, then you have we were given a small assignment when there was a VRS being announced, to work on the salary survey and other things. Not a big assignment, somebody else was doing it, and we were just doing the data entry kind of work because we were around. It was like, what are the social workers doing? Let them do this work. So some work would land into, and we were also okay because we are sitting in the office and not on the field. Some excitement and all that. So I got to learn a lot about HR. That was opening for me in HR. And around the same time, we had a national HRD network started in Hyderabad.
Hmm.
So VST had personal officer, personal manager, I think his name Rajesh Vidyasagar. So he was heading the national HRD network Hyderabad chapter, and he was stepping down to give it to somebody else. So we were taken to that meeting.
Okay.
They needed some crowd around, so we were asked, would you like to come? And I jumped in and I went. And there I have seen all the HR managers of the city, all the big guys, directors, and And my observation was there was no lady in there.
Hmm.
We had managed HR heads of banks, big companies, BHEL, HCL, and all. I was wondering how come there's not a single lady. Okay, even in the audience, except for me and a couple of other people, there were a couple of secretaries who followed with their bosses. So I was wondering how come, you know. Then that it kicked on me, saying that I should become a HR manager. So, okay, I should get into HR. But then I don't have an MBA degree. And whomever I met that day were from XLRIs, Tata Institute of Social Science, IIM Bangalore, all big cream.
Hmm.
And I felt I don't have that kind of a degree, so maybe I'm not taken for HR job. Then they were all industrial little people. The software was not there at the 94. There was not much of software, and so that's how it happened. And I was doing a lot of supervisory development programs. So I identified myself with training and development wing of HR. I decided that, I have the skill to enter into HR as a trainer, because I was doing workers training, I was doing supervisory training. And why I was doing, because the guys in VST felt that I can do that better. Like in NIMS, they felt I can do better announcement than others. Here
Hmm.
also, they felt I can do better. And because I also had that rapport with the workers, so that's how it happened. Uh, so I don't know if I'm taking a lot of time.
No, no.
Do you
I
have
think
a time constraint? Yeah.
no, I don't.
Okay.
This is
So
getting
that
more interesting.
no, but if you see how the competence is developed in me also, it's because of an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because of my curiosity to get in, and because my
There are a lot
willingness.
of people who think I need a certain degree to be in a certain place, but just the last 1 hour conversation or half an hour, I don't know how long we've had, but it's telling me that you don't require to qualify yourself in something to be able to do something. The moment you jump in and you
Yeah,
start
yeah,
learning and get curious, you can.
yeah. Somehow it happened with me at that time. At that time, maybe the competition is also not very high. So the journey in National HRD Network has actually grown me as a HR person
Hmm.
without any basic degree in HR. So those days we had every third Thursday a meeting in the HRD network, and this used to be in Begumpet. I was staying in
Even now it's
Vidyanagar.
in Begumpet.
Yeah, their office is in Begumpet. At that time it was in the staff college of bank, SBI staff training college, which is opposite to next to Grand Kakatiya Hotel. So So I went first meeting, and they said, so that day one Mr. Ramchandra Rao has taken over as a president of NHRD. He was from Bakelite Highland. That's a big company again.
Hmm.
So these names, VST, BHEL, Bakelite Highland, I used to hear in my college when, like, we went to field work in prisons, hospitals. The IRPM students would go into industries, so they would come and talk about that personal manager, that MD and all that. So those conversations I used to listen to them. So when I saw the Bakelet Hallam head of HR, it's like, my classmates were trying to get an appointment with this guy, and this guy was sitting next to me. So it was like feeling, oh, HR is something great. So every Thursday, come what may, I would go sit in the front row because of my height. Second thing, because I used to be the only girl or one or two ladies around, so I was given the front seat. Because I was sitting in the front, I was made to sing Vande Mataram song, just like the page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when you get what kind of recognition.
You are getting so much visibility for stuff.
And I used to feel very good about it, Niveditha. Now when I'm looking back, I used to feel what stupid thing I would have been, that, every Thursday sit in the first row and then called for Vande Mataram. So anyway, I got some attention because of Vande Mataram. So I would sing Vande Mataram. Because I sang Vande Mataram, once in a while when there is nobody to introduce the speaker, I used to get to introduce the speaker. Then I used to get to give vote of thanks. Okay. So the attention which I got actually pushed me into learning more about it. So every lecture I used to make notes and then come home and then have a look at it and say, oh, great, this guy has done so much. And most of the time it used to be training and development guys there. So my interest and my identity of a trainer was growing in VST industries with the workers training. And workers education was already, I knew what was happening. So I used to get invites from workers education to do trainings in other industries because I used to do training in Telugu. So they would say, can you talk about, let's say, wage compensation or can you talk about minimum wages? So by that time, I was also doing my law. So all these things, somehow fitted in.
Just weaving into it.
So I used to go talk. And Workers Education Center had a beautiful, set of books for workers in Telugu. So I brought the entire katta to my house, and I would sit and read all that, and then make notes. And next day I go and talk in some company. Somebody invited workers education, and because they didn't want to do it, they say, okay, Geeta ma'am is this, we'll share you and do it. And I would jump and go. They used to give me 100 rupees for that. Money was not the thing. And then few other trainers who saw me, they all started calling me and said, okay, can you help us also be part of the training? You take one session, I take one session. So I got offers like that. And I used to get paid 200, 250, sometimes 500. I never asked, depending on whatever they were doing. So the freelance consultants would call me and ask me to do a training, variety of training. Sometimes I didn't know the subject, but I used to read and connect and then talk about it. So the trainer in me was growing, and I was looking for an opportunity to be in the training wing. So one day I called a classmate. She was working for a placement firm. So I asked her, see, I'm getting bored with VST and they're not paying me. I was a retainer. I was not a full-time employee there. And with the TQM, they're trying to cut down the manpower. They're trying to, do this VRS. So the VRS, which has happened in VST at that time, also, I feel in the hindsight, it's somewhere when I start thinking the kind of activity we were doing, me and Lata were doing with the houses, families. When the VRS was announced, the families straight away took the VRS. And so that means they lost the job which they would have given to their son.
Oh.
And they were okay with that. Why they were okay, then they started seeing the other side of the coin, or they felt it's enough that we worked in a tobacco company, now we don't want to work. Something like that, some change. And there was a good handshake. They got golden handshake, good money they got. So we did some workshop on pre-retirement workshop. So we would call the couple and tell them, how to plan the retirement, because now they get a lot of money suddenly, how not to waste it, how not to use this. So that was one training program I was part of. Then I picked up a set of people who were going to the single digit lotteries. So I called my lecturer. She was the head of the department in psychology department. She taught me psychology in BA. I called her one day and said, look, there are a lot of kids here around 17, 18 years old. Some people lied that they are 18 years when they were 16 also. So they all joined this job in VST, but they have bad habits, undesirable habits. So she said, okay, let's do a workshop. And so I assisted her in the workshop, and I got to know what it takes to do a workshop of that kind. So training, again, training was like calling to me. So I called this friend. I said, VST things are not okay. Is there anything else? Then she said, what can you do? You're not from IRPM background. You don't fit into, you don't have an MBA. Why don't you do an MBA? I said, no, enough. After doing that law study, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. Then she said, okay, there's one consulting firm. They're looking for a trainer who can do trainings in Telugu. I said, okay, I will go for that. So this was Ford Consultings. Dr. Kokila Padsardi, Dr. Zahir Khan were ex-ASCII employees who started this company. And they had very good clientele where they were doing MDPs, Management Development Programs.
Yeah.
And because they were doing for the management, sometimes they were getting assignments for workers.
Mm.
And just around that time, this is in 96, IT was just coming up. So one or two IT companies also, they were trying to help in consulting. So I was given a job there. I joined them. It was in Banjara Hills. I would go by 2 buses to reach that office and walk because there was no direct bus those days to Banjara Hills. It was a very like a remote place kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I worked there only for 10 months, but I learned a lot about training in a corporate. Earlier it was all workers training, now it was corporate. So I was given some assignment to do in ONGC, so I went to Dehradun. And all I did there was assisting Dr. Zahir Khan with the simulations we do while training. So my learning in simulation, OB, I studied OB there, organizational behavior. Then I did organizational designing, uh, assignments we got. So my first assignment was with Karvi Consultants. They were growing rapidly, and somewhere they felt we need to do a study on the design. So here I am. I don't have a formal MBA degree. I just know what is an organization from BST Industries. And I'm given this assignment along with, of course, Dr. Kokila was the senior and I was assisting her. So she would say, you today you go and do some interviews of these people and check out on these items. I mean, these parameters your interview should be. And so I would go. Dr. Savita Mahajan was the HR head. She's from IIM Bangalore, I think, or Ahmedabad. A big figure in HR, okay? And then we had one Krishna Rao, who was again an MSW grad, but then into training. So they were inspiring me. They said, okay, when I go, I talk to their production managers, their marketing managers, their customer center managers. I had a set of questions to ask and then do the report. So again, MSW helped me in report writing, case studies. So I did all that and they were very thrilled. I said, oh, you did a wonderful case study like any other MBA. Even MBAs don't do this kind of a case study, kind of compliments I got. I said, oh, great. I was on a high saying that, okay, I fitted in. The feeling of I fitted into their thing was more. And then, so I got assignments of supervisory development. I got assignments on feedback surveys. A lot of things. It was going good, but somewhere I felt they didn't want to have more people in the organization, and somewhere they were not seeing the value they were expecting. While I was learning, they could not give me independently any assignment because I was not there. Okay. And that time I was going through a huge problem at home because I was staying with my parents with 2 children, and somewhere my husband was not feeling okay with that. Staying in in-laws' house with 2 children, though my parents have been very supportive. And so I used to spend more time in a commute, 2.5 hours almost, and then coming back and cooking. So the demand has gone up. Like, what are you doing in the house? You should be cooking. You should be taking care of the children. So this was actually making me dip in my potential. I could have, in that consulting organization, I was also thinking of starting my own consulting firm. Again, the entrepreneurial thing was playing on me, saying that why do I go for a 9-to-5 job and neglect my children? Why not I start my own consulting? Now I know what to do in an industry. Now I know what to do in a HR, that kind of a thing. So those things were playing on me. So, and I was open to take assignments. Now I know how to do a feedback survey. I know how to do organizational design. I mean, somewhere that confidence has grown that, okay, I can do my own, I can start. And Dr. Kokila Padisati was like a role model to me. She was an epitome of everything, independent, empowered woman. First time I've seen in my life, a director of a company. Like, I was itching to be like her. Back home, things were not so good. So then my husband's job was taking a toll because the company was not doing well, and there were conversations of they might close down the company. So so I could not concentrate my job well. Probably that's why they said I'm not reaching that level. So I was given a hint saying that I think it's time you moved on. So I just gave my resignation, landed home that day, 96, and I was very depressed. There are so many things I could do, but somehow that the hit of somebody saying you're not up to mark was killing me. So again, I called my friend, like placement person. So I nagged her. I said, look, for some reason they said like this. I was very open. I didn't want to hide anything. Then she said, what are you good at? She asked me. I said, I keep doing trainings, is what I told her. Then she said, okay, you come to my office. She was working for TMI network that time. So there was one office in Begumpet near Anantheto, near to that SP road. So I went to their office and she said, okay, there is one institute, software training institute. They need somebody to do communication skills training for the students.
Can I guess the company's name?
You can. You can.
Is it SQL?
Yeah. That was the only institute apart from NIIT in those days. So there I was. So they were reluctant to give me the job because they said you don't have any aptitude for computer science or even IT education. And only in when I was working at Kokila, I started operating a computer. Even in VST, we were not, given computers. We were doing handwriting and then give it to some secretary who would type and give it to the manager kind. And
just typing also, not even computer then. No?
Yeah, typing. Yeah. No, VST had computers, but I had a typewriter at home. Okay, by the way, I did my typing lower because my mom somewhere felt I will not do my education. So at least some skill should be there. At least she can become a typist somewhere.
Those days it was trending also, learning.
Trending, yeah. It was like after 10th, what are you doing sitting at home? You should go for typewriting classes.
I went to one class. I didn't go beyond that.
So I did my lower typing. I passed good marks. Then my mom also felt she is a librarian, so she said, okay, there's a certificate course in library science, so why don't you do it? Amazing. So while I was doing my BA, I used to go in the evening colleges. Actually, I topped in library science. It was a 6-7 months course.
I am inspired and impressed with your.
Yeah, so these courses were like side mein karte hai kind of,
Yeah, I mean.
Then another thing fascinating is I was doing my psychology, BA psychology, lot of interest in books and all. By that time, I was reading all Sigmund Freud books. Like I would, it was so funny that whenever I saw somebody with a beard, I would say, oh, like Sigmund Freud kind of thing. so much so my friends, anybody going with a beard, they say, see, that guy has a beard kind of. It's very funny. So I was so fascinated by Sigmund Freud books. I read the entire case studies on hysteria. Then I read dream interpretations. In fact, I was interpreting other dreams or others' dreams. Then I got interested in experimental psychology, Pavlov's studies, Skinner studies. Then there was something called cognitive therapy. All this actually worked in my psychiatric social work setting. Whatever I read. So coming back to this
SQL.
So in my resume, I wrote I can do assessment, psychometric assessment. I didn't know that was that was impressive for them to see. Then they said, okay, she can do psychometric, because I heard this in VST and I did to some extent help somebody do something like that, because they believed that I did psychology, so I would know that.
Around 96, 2005, I think psychometric and PAP test, TAT tests
That
were
test.
very, I think
Yeah.
humanity used to do that, right?
Yeah. So we did. So I did that test in VST. So I used to sit like a. You have this crystal glazing people, no?
With
So
the
it was like that. I used to sit in a room and the workers would walk in, and then we used to call it as dialogue room. So they would talk about their issues, and typically these are all absentee workers because they are not coming to office regularly. So Joe, go to counseling, talk to Geeta madam. If she says you're okay, then we'll take you in. So I used to use all these psychometric tests there, little ones, not the big psychometric reliability, validity, nothing. I would pick up from somewhere and then do my analysis and tell them, and they say, yeah, right. And that used to be. And I also knew their families, I knew their wives. By the way, I remembered all the 2000 employees' names. I used to remember their members' names. And when I walked into, I was also staying around that place in.
You have a big memory palace,
Now I
like
don't.
homes.
Then I had. In fact, I remember still then, but now I don't remember. So I used to walk in to the vegetable market. I find somebody from VST, one of the family members. I would stop and talk to them. And they would say, "Oh, madam, you remember my name?" I said, "Yeah, I remember your name. I came to your house so and so day." So anyway, so this psychometric thing, everything attracted SQL, and I landed in the job. And they said, "We can't give you a designation of a trainer." I felt very bad. I said, "A trainer, LND is what I'm looking for." Then they said, "No, you're not for that, but we want to give you as a placement head role."
Areva.
And I don't know anything ABC about placements. And then I asked, why would that be? Then he said, see, under placements, you will do training. You will also go to other corporates and talk to them that we have students here who get placed there. And why did they think like that? That I can do this? Because of my NHRD connect. By that time, I was going regularly to NHRD
And I
meetings.
also think it's about your voice. I personally feel it's about your voice also.
I don't
Your
know.
voice in the world.
Maybe because I was talking to people, and so by that time I knew who is head of BHEL, who is head of, and I had some kind of uh, entry into those corporates, which typically they don't allow others. So they must have seen this and said, okay, you can be this for us, do this for us. And so zero knowledge about marketing, zero knowledge about placements, but I understood what they are really looking. I have to help these students to get placed. It falls into my gamut of connecting people and helping them, and also imparting some tips on how to groom themselves, how to become more communicative, and all that from the psychology background. Somehow it fitted well. And so I was visiting corporates and telling them, look, we have some students, why don't you take? There were no engineering students in those days. Anybody could walk in and do a course in software IT. And so I used to go to Maitrivanam, wait outside all these small software companies, and then talk to them and impress upon, why don't you come to our center and we'll do a career mela for you. You will get 200 CVs and you can select from there. So some of the HR guys would say, we don't need 200 CVs. You do all the selection and get the best of 10 to us. So I understood what is required in the market and the recruitment and all that. But somehow I didn't like that role of going and talking to corporates and talking about the students. But I liked the training part. So very soon, this training and not training, placement division of SQL, there was a huge demand in the centers as they were also expanding. So I had overnight, maybe in a couple of months after I joined, I had to take one placement executive for each center across India. So I had to select. So typically I selected MBA guys with marketing and all that. And some of them were MSWs also. Um, but I gave more emphasis on marketing because I didn't have that skill. So I want them to do that job. So I had somebody in Calcutta, I had somebody in Bhubaneswar, Delhi. In Delhi, we had two centers, Lodi Road as well as Kailash Nagar, then in Bangalore, then Chennai, then Hyderabad, we had two centers. So almost I had 10 executives across India reporting into me every day. And I had a database. Those days we didn't have so much of technology. Internet was also not so popular. So we used to read. So every day morning, my task was to call them on the phone and ask them, which newspapers have you read? How many job listings have you connected? How many people have you called? So I used to have a chart with all the geographies, executives, and every day my first hour job was that. After that, I call the branch manager and say, are they still sitting in the branch or are they going on the field? Then I would set up the dates and say, so and so date I'm coming to Calcutta. Let us have a career fair there. So that guy has to go around and get the corporates to come to the center, or we take the students to the corporate. So Salt Lake, we had some corporates coming in. Bhubaneswar also we had. So I was traveling like crazy. So my traveling started with Ford consultants, Dr. Kokila Patsa. Like I went to Delhi with them. First time I took a flight. Um, Not first time, second time. First time I went to Baroda from BST, where I was asked to go and represent the corporate social responsibility seminar was going. I was asked to go then. So that was the first time I went in a flight. Second, with Kokila, I used to go only in flight. So it was a great experience. You know, you go to a new city, stay in a hotel alone, and then you have these people sending you a car. You go in the car and then do the training and then come back. Somehow I liked all that. So in SQL, my job was every 2 months I was out of the Hyderabad city and then go to different centers. So whenever I went, I used to take sessions. I was invited by the colleges, other colleges. Then corporate sometimes would invite me to do a session for the employees as part of a value add. Nobody was paying us for that. So then I knew that this is where the money is, but I could not ask because I was part of a corporate going for a service. Um, so like that, it helped me to travel a lot and then gain experience. And I had a proper salary now, and things were shaping up well for me then. And around that time, I got elected as a secretary for NHRD. And
Oh.
how did this happen? It's out of blue. I had no idea that there was a committee, there would do elections and all that. So it was not elections, it was a selection, nominated post. There was
Hmm.
no voting or anything. So you had president of Nizam Sugar Factory, Mr. Satyanarayana. Then you had ITC head HR. You had big companies heads of HR were in the committee. So we used to call them president, vice president, secretary, and all that. And so we were told that next time elections, next time new committee will come. Every 2 years there's a new committee. So I never thought my name would come into that. But suddenly when it was announced, I was like zapped. I said secretary to NHRD Hyderabad chapter, and that's me. It was like I was blown away. So when I went to SQL, I said, look, I got secretary position and all. I said, okay, then you should get more corporates. I didn't like that. But then, anyway, so the expectations were more. So I asked them to shift me into HR department. They said, no, it's already filled by a IIM guy, so you don't have a chance. you're not an MBA also. Somehow it pinched me. I said, okay, what to do? So SQL went in for IPO, and that time there was a corporate communication person there, and there was a business alliance person. So very high level of interactions were happening. And though I was not involved in any of this IPO work, but I was very present to what was happening there. I knew exactly how the IPO was getting done, what kind of publicity, visibility they were looking at, what kind of communications was going on, and my role as a placement head, national placement head, I was asked to put in more value add to the students so that they look up to SQL for as a education center. We were competing with NIT, Aptech. So I used to once I even conducted a meeting with all the placement officers, saying that how can we do well, kind of a thing. In NHRD, I called the placement officers and did some small round table kind of a thing. And so while this was happening, SQL, somehow I was losing the interest there, and the kind of what you call post IPO. I mean, again, my senses were so sharp that I could see the differences cropping up in leadership post IPO. So you all work charged up for the IPO. You get the IPO. You get a lot of money in the IPO. You get stock, and suddenly you find people becoming different. I don't want to use any words here, but then I have seen that. It's just like a dogfight, and then then one against the other, and then they start using the money for something. When you do an IPO, you're supposed to use the money for a certain thing which you declare, but then money gets diverted to something else. All good for the company, nothing bad. They wanted to grow the company, but somehow they lost the track. I could sense it, and then so that's when I decided, okay, if I have to go now to any place, I have to go as a HR person, because they denied me that role here. So next I have to go for HR. It was not easy. The acceptance was very low. The minute I would put on my application, they say, oh, social work. We don't have any work for social workers here. I said, look, I have these competencies. I tell them I do L&D, I do recruitment, I do this. They say, no, you don't have experience in this. It was very, very sad. I even went to interviews with, that time IT was growing up. I didn't get any opening there. I went to my friend. My friend also said the same thing. Look, you should have an MBA, and you should. I said, look, I have 6-7 years of experience with people and all. So nobody was looking into it. That's when I started reading about competencies. So I did a session in NHRD. I said, look, HR people, you don't know about competencies. Here is what I'm telling you, kind. And then saying that you should look in competencies in people, not the qualifications. So there was a huge debate around it, and then people started talking about competencies. It was very interesting that you read about David McClelland, who worked in Andhra, and then came up with this concept of competencies. Then you have all big stalwarts of HRD, TV Rao and others talking about competencies, and nobody is here listening to that. And again, the turning point, because I was doing a lot of hangama about the competency. Dr. Y.R.K. Reddy called me one day. He was the president of NHRD. Yeah. So he called me, and I know him as a professor in ASCII. When Kokila Parsadi I was working, she used to talk high about Dr. Y.R.K. Reddy. He said he's a dean at that time, or he was somebody very senior. So, and whenever I saw him in HRD, he was a very very reserved person, and will speak to only few very few words. And in NHRD 96, we had a huge international conference where I was also part of that, because I was the secretary at that time. So I used to see him in the elite of HR. A lot of regards for him. In fact, I used to be scared to speak in front of him, because he was like. So I got a call from him, and he said, look, I want to start a competency center. he started a consulting firm in 97. So he called me and said, I'm looking for someone who has a research orientation. Uh, so would you be interested? I can't pay you more. This is what I can pay, which is less than what I was earning. So I jumped in. I said, okay. No thoughts about where I'm going. There's no thought about, is it a full-time job? Is it a permanent job? Is it giving me gratuity? Is it giving me PF? Nothing, no thoughts. You see, wherever I jumped, even today, it's not for money. It's just an interest, and then I moved in. So we did a lot of work on competency research. By the time we were ready to give the prototypes of how the competency research can assess a person, not on qualifications, but on the experiences they gained. And we did some survey, small survey to put it. In 2000, we also had what we call another conference coming up. So I was so charged up doing that research, and he gave me a title of, he gave me, my designation was COO. Okay, it's next to CEO. So
Yeah.
I was looking at getting into HR manager or HR executive role, not even manager. And here comes the role of a COO. I didn't know much about what is a COO at that time, but I heard, I got to know later that, it's a operations role, and then you have to put things in place and get things rolling. So there was a lot of hope about this becoming a consulting assignment going forward. By that time, I learned what is consulting assignments looks like from Kokila Barsadi's firm, and also in VST, I've seen big consultants walking in and talking and getting big money. And so I pictured myself as, consultant in Yaga Consulting, a big firm again because of the name and because of the kind of research we were doing. Dr. Reddy used to call it as a boutique firm. And he said, I don't want huge employees around here, just few people, 1 to 3 people who will do only research work and also consulting work. It appealed to me, and it gave me a lot of time to give to my children. And, there was no demand of time there. There's no, and I used to travel there also, but no demand of thing. So I did competency research, and then we published a monograph first time. And while we were thinking about going and telling people what is competency, corporates, we did few presentations at that time. And we did some workshops on business ethics, very elite kind of HR work, ESOP planning. I was not part of ESOP planning team, but I knew what it was. And then a little bit about corporate governance, because Dr. Reddy used to go around and worldwide, he used to give lectures on that. So something on corporate governance is like, it's a bigger, challenge, a bigger subject for us. So I never heard these things in any other place. ESOP planning, corporate governance, business ethics, competency centers. So I felt I'm whereas a few months back, I was looking for a recruiter job, I was looking for an L&D job. Now I'm talking about bigger things. It gave me a good feel that, I'm talking about big things, though I'm not totally equipped to do any of that. I was learning. So I got a huge assignment given to me that they said there is this bank which is going for some change. I didn't know what change it was. And they want you to go and do a feedback survey. So by that time, I was like a dada in feedback survey. So, but then there is already a questionnaire being set. See, all you have to go and do a conversation. So I was to do a conversation, elicit information, do the reporting, case study, whatever. I said, okay, good. I liked it. So I went to, this was Global Trust Bank. So I was there. I was given the list of people whom I should interview, and they arranged the travel. So I moved around and then got the stories.
We were given instructions to make sure that you had a good time in that space because we had to retain you at any cost.
So So we did that study, and I gave my inferences, which were very sharp inferences, and I I was told that was the time when the National HRD conference was happening again, international conference in 2000, and Dr. Gelly, Mr. Ramesh Gelly was the chairperson of the conference. So he got to know that I'm working with Dr. Vayaka Reddy, who was also earlier worked with Global Trust Bank as the Vice President HR. So somehow the entire scenario looked very familiar, people known to me kind of thing. Mr. Job Xavier was the head of HR there. So I submitted my report to Dr. Reddy, and we did some tweaking, and then my report went to Mr. Gelly. And one day, Dr. Reddy called me and said, look, you are not working with me any longer. So like my heart sank. I said, what are you saying? We're about to start the competency center, and there's something which I wanted to do. Then he said, no, your report, whatever, went to Global Trust Bank. They felt a person who has seen all this and heard all this should be working along with them during the change management. I said, okay, great. So then I asked him, is it in HR department? Then he said, of course, why do you ask that? So, I mean, the dream was to be in HR department, not dream, the next goal was to be in HR department. So I was very excited. I said, okay, I'm going as a HR manager to this place. I didn't even negotiate on the designation with my experience or exposure. I just said, okay, HR manager is good, so go. After I landed there, I realized people who were HR managers were not of my caliber, but then anyway, I was okay with that. And so I joined DTP full time. And then the change started happening. I was part of the due diligence team. As you know, I was sent to access UTI Bank. I met people. Again, I did reports about interactions, conversations, and moved in. Then we were doing roadshows on performance management system, Apex. So I was in Kerala. That's when this news broke out that there's a merger called off.
Yeah.
Then all that trouble broke. So I've seen people moving off. Some people were asked to go. Some people resigned and job changed. So when I was handling some of the activities, I was called by OBC, and then they asked me, excuse me. Then they asked me to go to Delhi and be part of their personal department in Delhi. Somehow it didn't sound good to me in the sense I met OBC HR people, and they were all, most of them were bankers who moved into personal department, and they were about to retire. And somehow it didn't appeal to me to go to that place and do HR. It looked little obsolete HR to me, not the kind of HR which I was seeing and I was believing that it will be like. So I resigned without any job in hand. People said I'm mad. People said you could have gone to one of the branches and become a banker. In fact, the entire household was against me.
Your mom would have been very happy then, no?
My mom never had any strict thing, she believed it.
That she should write bank exams, no? So without a bank exam.
My father-in-law.
Oh, your father-in-law, sorry.
He was no more by that time. So my father was very unhappy. My father said, I thought at least in one place you would settle down. Why moving so many jobs? For him, it's like good jobs, but then settle down there. Banker. I said, I don't know anything about banking. I'm very poor in accounting, maths. Why do you want, I want to learn all that? if I were to learn anything, let me do my PhD. This was my thought process then. Why would I go and learn something which I'm not good at? I can spend that time in something else. So I moved off without a job. Then I started applying. Somewhere I felt so many IT companies have come, and with my HR tag, I would get a job. I was called for the interviews. Then somebody said, you're too qualified for us. Someone said, you don't know recruitment, you haven't done recruitment. Someone said, but you don't know IT people. They're different, they're very difficult to handle. In fact, my own colleagues in the past, uh, who were actually interviewing me, they said, no, you don't fit in here. Someone said, you're more of a social worker. And somebody was bold enough to tell me that you don't look like a software kind of employee.
How does that one look like? I
Yeah,
want.
so I asked that person politely. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, look, you have to be a little more stylish, fashionable, or maybe you should cut your hair. Maybe it may not suit you anyway. So somebody was trying to talk about my appearance, didn't like that. Then I didn't say anything because it was an ex-colleague. So I thought maybe software industry made him say all that. But later on, I told him, I gave him at some other point, not at that time, but so the perception about a software HR was like an aggressive person who would, shout at people, who would make people wait, and is like a god.
Mm.
And I've seen people doing that. You are made to wait for 2 hours, 3 hours to get an appointment of HR manager in a software company. Then there was a lot of money flowing in into recruitment departments of software company through other means. People were suddenly rich. People were suddenly, the lifestyles were changing. So why would they do it? Not on a salary. So somehow I didn't like that. So I started applying for other jobs. I didn't get. Everybody would look at my resume and they'll say, oh yeah, we know you from NHRD. I know Geeta Goti from NHRD. But then Geeta Goti is not given a job because of XYZ reason. And I was a little outspoken also. So people didn't like it probably. So I knew that the doors are closed in Hyderabad. Too much of familiarity is also not good.
Mm.
I realized that that's my learning again. So I started applying at other cities. Then I started connecting with people whom I know in other cities. And Dr. Balaji, I knew him from Academy of HRD. So he called me one day and he said, Saskin was looking for a person with more empathy kind of a thing. And I thought you fit into it. Then immediately I asked him, can I send my resume? And then interviews happened. Then by that time I'm not yet out of GTB. I was being looked at by the OBC to join them in Delhi. So I got this offer in Bangalore. So I went home. I told everybody, look, I have only two options: either go to Delhi or Bangalore. So you tell me where I should go. I can't be in Hyderabad because I will not get job. So my husband said, you have to work anyway. My work is now not there. It's going off very soon. I'll be asked to, the company will close. And I don't have any other skill to go and work. Neither I have an interest to study anything. I'll take care of the family. You go. He was very clear. Said, you're no use here. You better go, kind of a thing. Then my mom, my dad, my mom was not too happy. She said, wow, how will you go? New place, new this thing and all. My dad also said something like that. But I said, no, I have to go. And by that time, I was also feeling that too much of dependency on my parents and all. So if I go to Bangalore, probably I'll take my children later on there. And if my husband loses his job, he'll also come with me. These are the thoughts when I picked up the offer with Saskin Communications. I got double the salary, what I was getting in Global Trust Bank. The offer was good. The role was a new role in the sense they are looking for a employee relationship manager.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with HR. It had nothing to do with anything else. So when I attended the interview, I was interviewed by a American who was heading the one of the ODCs there, and I was interviewed by another person who was also the head of the vertical business vertical. I was not interviewed by HR, business people. So they asked me a lot of questions about how IT industry is and all this. So my responses were more to do with people. And my experience in Hyderabad was very bad with IT, so I didn't want to talk about those, but I talked about how people need to be, groomed and all that stuff, which probably they liked, and so I was taken in. And it took 3 months for me to get a relieving from OBC because they were not leaving me. They said you have to come to Delhi.
Yeah, that time banking operations also was doing 3 months relieving, not earlier than that.
Yeah. I got a call from someone from Delhi, OBC, saying that, look, we'll give you whatever you want. We want you here, kind of a thing. I said, no, I'm sorry. And so I went and joined. And these people waited for 3 months for me to join them. So I joined them, and then I realized that I'll be working on a new vertical called employee relationships, which would be more like um, not relations, employee relation, not the IR or the employee relations kind of a thing, but something to do with making people feel more worthwhile and contribute. And also, this company was shifting from a product into a service. Services company need a different orientation. Product company, they don't face a client. They don't need to understand what the client needs. Products are on a specification, products are done. Then they are sold in the market. But services, you need to know who your client is, how they behave, how they understand things, what is their requirement. So that kind of thing was going on, and they needed a HR person. After I joined, a couple of months later, I was also given the role of a vertical head, what we call today as HRBP. So some 800 people project, or Nortal project, I was given. And why I was chosen, because there was a client sitting inside the organization and headed by American. And there's another customer of the client also sitting in the same office by a French guy. So Americans and French have certain different styles of working. And to top it all, this American was hired by Saskin. So I was part of that interview process. When the interviews were happening, I was called in to, give my opinion about different candidates. So that was the kind of trust they had on HR. And Dr. Hari Iyer was the head of HR. He used to call himself culture manager, culture head or something, culture officer. Very different kind of a scenario, not like a conventional HR at all. What I've seen, what I believed here, it was like totally different. It was something very agnostic to HR. So you had HR relationships. Then we also had, I used to report into Dr. Balaji for some time, and Dr. Srinivas Kandula. So so it was a different engagement, and I started loving that role and working on it. Then I had another division was under me, products division, which was totally a products kind of a thing. And they wanted to do some profit sharing model of compensation. So first time in my life I was working on a compensation modeling. Then there was an IPO. So there's a second IPO I was going through, and I knew exactly what will happen there. Very good experience I had. I was also allotted some ESOP in the process. Then there was a lot of experimentation happening with the people around, with the process, with the structure. So it was always a fluid kind of a department. It was never a static department, and there was a lot of research happening. So all my competency work was actually, I'm seeing that, people are talking. And then attrition was very high. So my absenteeism examples I was seeing here also, because there was no attendance system. Nobody believed in attendance system. So people would walk in and walk out whenever they have work. They had a small primary, not nursery school inside the campus. They had a creche inside the campus. They had a medical center inside the campus. So it was like a universe in itself. And so I started enjoying this work, and things were going on well. My children were coming to the high school, and I made plans to bring them to Bangalore. They came to Bangalore. They saw Bangalore city. They stayed with me. I was staying in a PG. That's another experience I have. Is I stayed alone. I stayed in PG for 2.5 years, and my PG mates were youngsters who came first time to a city like Bangalore and working. So I used to see their life, what was happening in their lives. Um, that's a different story totally. Um, Very interesting, but we stayed with the family, Roman Catholic family, who gave the PGs to some 10 odd, women, which was walkable distance from the office. So for me, there was no commute. I started enjoying this work, and so my children came and they didn't like Bangalore. They said, no, we'll not study in Bangalore, we'll not stay in Bangalore. Somehow for them, Bangalore was not the city to be. So again, back to square one, to continue or
Yeah.
to go back.
Yeah.
So my daughter was young, so I felt she needs mother around. So I decided to move on to Hyderabad again. But Hyderabad, I know I'll not get a job. Somehow, because of the Saskin experience, they have seen some merit in me, and Virtues offered me a job
Mhm.
in Hyderabad,
Okay.
and I joined Virtues. This was in 2007, I think, 2007. So the first thing, when I was interviewed by Virtues, I was interviewed by a Sri Lankan who was
Mhm.
heading one of the verticals, and they came. I mean, I flew down. They booked my ticket, so I flew down. I attended the interview. From Begumpet, I straight went to their office in Begumpet, attended the interview, and next day I took a flight back to Bangalore. So once I reached Bangalore, I told that I attended an interview. I told my immediate boss. Then he said, "Are you sure you want to move?" Then I said, "This is my family situation." Then he said, "I'm also moving." So, so it so happened both of us moved around the same time, and he joined Patney, I think, at that time. So I came and joined Virtues after 2 months. I got relieving. And, I joined here, and the first thing they told me is, here there's nobody in this vertical. I was given a vertical, and my boss from Sri Lanka, he told me, nobody survives here. They take pride, the entire delivery takes pride in shunting out the HR person. So it's been almost 5 years, there is no HR person there. And this gentleman from Sri Lanka was handling it, and there's a new head of HR who came in Hyderabad, Mr. T.N. Hari. So he also interviewed me, and he asked me only one question: what do you understand about business? And then he asked about the IPO in Saskin, which I was happy to share. Then he asked me about the compensation related aspects, which I was happy to share, about profit sharing model and all that. So somehow I got selected. Later I got to know he's a guy who is having a finance background, and he believes most of the HR don't understand finance.
Oh.
So somehow I did well in my interview, so I got in. So that's the scenario in Virtusa when I entered, and I could stay for 3.5 years, and um, the perceptions about HR changed a lot. Again, I was given a roadshow about PMS the minute I joined. I was asked to work on recruitment, leadership, hiring because of my assessment skills. I was consulted on some ethics related code of conduct, then on legal side. Okay. So the legal thing again, one aspect happened when I was in the bank. There was a sexual harassment case which came up. So because I had a legal background, so I immediately put my teeth into understanding what it is. Went through the Vishaka guidelines, connected with few people who are having committees, internal committees. Then I dealt with 3 to 4 cases while I was there. So this was in the back of my mind. So when I came in I put these things to them saying legally we need to have this committee, and also they immediately formed a committee. Then I started getting complaints of harassment here there. So I was handling that as well. So somehow the image of Geeta Goti was somebody is very senior in HR. Um, so she had a lot of knowledge, kind of image I had in virtues of. And so things changed, the structures changed, the business verticals changed, and a lot of things were changing. And I was doing leadership hiring at that time, and I was not having full-time work, more of it. So when I did leadership work, I felt it will not stay for long, because that's not a continuous role unless you're growing at a fast pace. And that's when Satyam fiasco happened.
Mm.
So very interesting, 7th of Jan, I think it happened. And 11th of Jan, I was called by somebody from US. We had our head office in US. And they said, can you get all the leaders' profiles of Satyam?
Mm.
Because I'm in the leadership hiring. I didn't know how that is possible. Then I said, so I asked my questions. I said, which positions are you looking at to fill in? And what is the timeline you want to fill? And so the person said, I don't care. I want all the cream of Satyam to join us.
Mm.
Didn't make meaning to me. There is this organization where the entire leadership is in question about their ethics and all this, and you're talking about hiring. So I went to my manager and I said, this is the ask. So what do you want me to do? So I just called Satyam and asked them how many people they are laying off. It's not so easy. It's for some reason, I called somebody I know in Satyam and I said, is there any list you're preparing? Would you like to share with us? I'm heading leadership function and all that. Then they said, oh yeah, we are coming up with a list. Once it is ready, we'll share it with you. So I went back and I told the same thing. Then one of the delivery heads called me and said, look, there's a client I know, a big client of Satyam, of this IT firm, who is not wanting to be part of that firm anymore because of the ethical reasons. They want to shift. And he said, this is the name of the client, and this many resources are there. I want the entire bit to sit in this office. Now, I was given a time of a week. So I did my homework and I started connecting with my recruiters. The team was there and I said, this is how we need to go about doing it. And then we did all that, and the entire client sat in Virtusa within a month's time. Some 25, 30 people just walked in. They walked from there to here and then came in. So that gave a high of, a recruitment function, the strategic recruitment function, as they call. Till that time, for me, recruitment was not a good
Not
place
so
to be.
interesting, but now it's
More than interesting, it was having that mark of, people are not fair here.
yeah.
Okay. And anyway, I had my ups and downs in Virtusa. So my boss left. So suddenly I could see the vacuum in leadership. The new leadership came and things started changing. Though I was not at any disadvantage, but the role which I was doing in recruitment was not something which was okay with me. So So I called a couple of friends and said, look, I'm looking for a change and all that. So suddenly one day I got a call from a executive search firm, a big one. And this gentleman said, if you're interested, there's an IT company looking for a head of HR. Now here I was the head of a vertical. Head of HR made me feel like jump up. I said, okay, great, head of HR position. So let me go and see. And though I attended interview, and the CFO of the company took my interview because there was no head of HR there. Then I was told this company is in transition. They have taken over 2-3 companies. They're merging, and there's a huge change management. Do you know anything about change management? So I gave all the examples of change management, and then this guy looked impressed, and he talked something about the business numbers, revenues, clients, and all, which I was able to respond probably, and I got the job. So this was Cambridge Technologies, and they had a new CEO, a German from SmartShift, which was merged in. Then they had another company in Bangalore, QSoft merged, which was a training center. Then they had another company, ComCreation. So all this merger things happening. So all new 3-4 sets of employees, different entities, had to work for one company now. So there's a huge employee relations aspect which kicked in. So I used to visit Bangalore once in a month, sit with them, and I could see that different levels of competencies there. So we came up with a competency mapping. We saw who is at what level and what are the gaps there. A lot of good work went in there, and then I had the recruitment function, um, then training, then all the employee engagement. A lot of good work. It was actually doing very good, and I should have stayed there, but for the sometimes the the curiosity of being somewhere and doing something kills the thing. I think that is a big shift I have taken, which impacted me financially, because I was doing pretty well, good salary, a lot of respect, and global head HR, new company, mm, listed company, all that. And I wanted to become an entrepreneur. Then that's when I was part of COVI, also Confederation of Women Entrepreneurs. And somewhere I felt I should have my own firm, and it's time for me to hang up my shoes and do something different. Um, and I didn't look at my financial position. I thought, okay, I have good bank balance, I can survive. And by that time, my husband almost, was sitting at home. Not a good decision. I shouldn't have taken, but then I jumped in when I had an offer of a small consulting firm, recruitment firm, who wanted to make it big. So they showed me their financial statements, and it was doing 50 lakhs at that time. And they said, you will be a partner and we can do a profit sharing. So there are two things running in my mind. One, start my own firm, and then grow as a entrepreneur, or start with someone who is small and grow along with them, because you will have the entire team along with you. If you start on your own, you have to build your team. There's a lot of financial aspects coming in. So I went into this firm with 1/3 of what I was earning and loads of work, because it's a recruitment firm. To make a recruitment firm into a consulting and a bigger firm, and the target was they want to make 1 crore. And already they were 10 years into it's not a startup, 10 years they have spent. In 10 years, they could make 50 lakhs. And I was thinking it should have done more. So somewhere, that's again, I would say my overconfidence. I stepped in thinking that I will change things. And it was hitting me with attitude. So I went and jumped into this as a partner. I was given a letter or a partnership, and I would given a stake if the company makes good and this much will be profit. And all those letters were good to see. So I joined. I scaled the company from 50 lakhs in 5 years to 20 plus crores,
So,
and an IPO. First time we went in for an IPO as a small and medium enterprise. Around the same time, I got offer a nomination position in National Small Industries Corporation, which is a PSU,
yeah.
as a women director. Okay, and I was also parallelly working in this firm on a application, HRIS application, which would go into for a small and medium enterprise. Lot of activity. I was like, traveling. They also had started branches in other cities, so I was traveling. I didn't do anything but grow this company. And family was always at a second, interest, in the sense attention. I moved my house to close to this office because I didn't want to waste in commute time. They also had a small education wing where non-HR people were taught HR for the small and medium enterprises so that they can start their work. So mornings I used to take classes, afternoon work, and they had good clientele. I used to face the client. In fact, my role was CEO, but Chief Experience Officer. So we came up with new terms. It's experience which counts, user experience kind of a thing. So that relationship managers to experience managers. So somehow when it comes to HR, my designations are not in HR. so here I was experience officer and looking at the client experience, training the people, placing them, and then they had this model of HR function management. So you outsource the entire function to us and we manage it. And this application getting developed, and then we had some senior people joining in IT. Then there was a thought of getting into franchisee. So I didn't do much of franchisee thought process, but the CEO did. But I gave that time to that person because I managed the entire business, visiting other centers, talking to clients, and the credibility which I had by that time as a global head HR of Cambridge, came and joined a small firm, was making the clients feel, okay, there's something here, we should go. So the clientele was IT, non-IT, manufacturing, retail, all kinds of clients. Actually, I liked that different industries I was handling. And my attention was also on Confederation of Women Entrepreneurs, where I was going and taking sessions, encouraging people to get into business, small businesses. I was telling how to open an office, how to do the registrations, how to empower them in financial understanding and all that. So the 7 years, last 7 years, I would say, till 2017, 2011 to 2017, or 2010 to 2017 was like a roller coaster. I didn't know how that 7 years passed. So much was happening around me, and I was feeling very good about it. In fact, when the company went for IPO, I was made an executive director. I was on the board. So board decisions, corporate governance, all this was happening. I never expected that I would become an executive director. And it's not the designation, but it's a mere work which was challenging and keep me going. So again, experience of SQL. And the irony is I brought the SQL finance guy here as a CFO. So whatever SQL, the way it dropped after IPO, I started seeing the scenarios here. But here I am in the leadership position. There I was just a manager. I was seeing something happening in front of me. Here I'm seeing it's happening with me. Painful, not something I wanted to be in. And my conscience didn't agree to this. And I was open about it. I said, funds can't be misused. This is public money. And when you are gone for IPO, you have, I know that, how much I had to convince people to put money in the IPO, my relatives, my friends. You can't be using this money for your personal use. So I was very vocal about it. and I was not liked for it. So I spoke to the board. We had other board members, external member, independent directors. I told them, look, this is what is happening. I wrote a big mail, and I said this is not okay for us. For some reason, they didn't want to listen to me. So whatever the partnership, the sweat equity, and all that suddenly disappeared in the conversations. And I actually I told them, if you guys don't listen, I would go to SEBI, I would go to labor court and all that. And the CEO was missing from the scene. It was the second line, third line who were interacting with me. And CEO has actually absconded, sitting in some country and saying my passport is lost. There was a threat. If he comes back, he knew that Geeta can do something to me. And I knew exactly what can happen to a CEO in case I talk about this money laundering or misuse of funds. I could put it in labor court, I could put it in corporate, and I knew enough corporate governance to challenge the independent directors. So they knew there was a threat. So mediators walked in, and one of the independent directors from she's a US citizen, she stepped in and she started having negotiations with me, and it was not okay with me the way things were happening. And I was just thinking this is the time I could do something more sustainable in the profession. I want to do something more in the CSR. There are a lot of plans I had with this company. And then there's a strategic advisor, uh, a strategic advisor who already lost in two companies has become an advisor here for some reason. So it was not looking good to me. So I put down my papers, but I made some demands saying that I have to get all my whatever I was due to get. Except sweat equity, I got whatever I was due, which was required for any employee. So I was treated like an employee when I left this company, which was very painful. Had I put my 7 years in my developing my own company, I wouldn't have so much of bad feeling. Even if I failed, I would have said, okay, it's my mistake, I failed. But here it was not my mistake. It was for the values which I was standing, I was punished. And that has altered the way I look at the company. And though I don't have anything to do with that company now, I still see that they do the same things. And I don't know how they are getting away from it. So anyway, that's that story. I kept it behind me. 2017, I moved on and started my own firm. And I looked at what am I doing differently here. So I'll do all of HR when it comes, but I will strengthen the compliance factor. That corporate governance compliance thing was hitting me hard.
Yeah.
Even if it is a small and medium enterprise, even if it is a proprietary firm, if it's a public money, they are not using it for proper use, and that business should not be around. So the honest business is what I was looking at. So I started my firm, and it's very funny the way I started. I was just thinking of registering a firm and all that. I was looking for a name, and I knew I want to be in compliance more than HR, because HR has a lot of players in the market. And standing alone in the consulting field, you should have some expertise people look up to, and I felt the legal expertise is something I can. No one can challenge me on the legal side, because I've seen last 30 years how the things have been. I can move into a union situation, I can move into a compliance, so a kind of a thing. So there was a company where they had a exposure in the media about an expat harassment case. And a friend of mine who was a teacher in a school, she calls me and says, look, a friend of my colleague, a teacher, and it's her husband's firm, there is this expat who landed into a sexual harassment case. How do we deal this? And she said, maybe you know because you are from the women empowerment kind of a field. She doesn't know that I'm a law graduate also. I said, can you help them? I said, great, let me talk to them. And I went in, I spoke to them, and I got them out of that sticky situation. It was a kind of a liaising between the police and all that. Then I told them they didn't know that there was a act, anti-sexual harassment, POSH Act, prevention of sexual harassment. So I told him you should have. So they had to pay a penalty because they didn't have an internal committee, and it was huge for them as a reputation for the company. It was a German company, so I told him, look, just because you didn't have an internal committee, you had to pay so much. So why don't you have an internal committee? And they said, okay, what is it required? So I said, this is what you need to have a chairperson and all that, and you need to have an external member, and I can step in as an external member. Then they said, okay, let's sign it. In 2 days, we signed the agreement. I didn't even know what to put in the agreement because I didn't know what worth I should demand for the services. And so I quoted some number and they agreed, and then we signed this. And that's the starting. I didn't have my firm registered by that time. So the first two bills, so it was a monthly engagement as a retainer. Then I felt, okay, they agreed for a good amount. So I offered, I said, okay, not only this, I will also do 1 day training for your employees every month. It's from me kind. So they agreed. It's a small company, not a big one. So I started working with them. And after that, I realized there's a huge potential on this. And then I got calls from the Telangana Commissioner's office. Then HICIA was there. They helped me. They organized a session when I was working with that other firm. I was invited to talk about this subject. And in Avasa Hotel, they organized it. Myself and two other legal guys, we stood up and spoke about the subject. And people remembered. 300 people attended. And after I moved out of this firm and started my own, I started in December. By March, I signed up 6 to 7 clients who listened to me in that particular, who attended that particular seminar, and they were calling me. And so that's how the business started. So it's still going on. So while I was doing this, I was also applying for jobs, thinking that, there's some good job comes in, so I should start. I can't just be on this financially. I should not have an impact. Touchwood, I never had any impact on financially. I was earning good. So I got an offer from one of the clients who worked with this firm. Again, that one was an ESOP assignment, which I did for them in those days. So they called me and they offered me this job. And within 3 months, they got taken over by a bigger firm. So I lost my job because they were looking for other HR was already there in that company. So they don't need 2 HR heads and not as senior as me. So I moved on. Then I realized if I have a company on my name as me as a proprietor, it would be a conflict of interest if I go into a job. So I moved it into a partnership firm without me. And now it's doing good.
Awesome.
We have one of the big clients, which gives me a lot of work on sexual harassment cases. Now I'm part of the Telangana government, one of the panelists on their, atrocities on women. They have certain activities going on. I'm part of that. And in between, because of my entrepreneurship background, I got a job, a retainer kind of a job. It's actually a full-time job where I will be staying outside the city in close by place, running a entrepreneur development center for young women. Right now, it's keeping me busy. So the kind of work I do here, develop curriculum, write case studies, which I'm good at. So, I mean, I look at the pattern, it's again coming back, and legal work.
Yes.
So whatever I was doing in my first job, I'm doing it now. but with more,
More
expertise.
finesse and expertise.
And I know what I can demand for this. So maybe I'm learning still. There's a lot to learn. And this job, what I'm doing with the Telangana government, is also something very unique. If I do well, it becomes an example in itself. And very passionate people around me. In fact, I'm loving this work. Even if they had not paid, I would have taken this job. It's something very close to my heart. Young girls, 18 to 20 years, who would become entrepreneurs. So anyway, that's a little bit about my story.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It is such an inspiration for me to even just go through the wave and curve of the whole thing and see how everything falls in place. And then there is that, sense of coming to being.
Yeah. I also feel very strange sometimes the way it went around. Maybe I had to learn certain lessons, so that's how the path had shown me all that. And I'm enjoying every place I enjoyed, and this also I'm enjoying.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling me in. I never did this kind of an interview before. It's refreshing to go back and look at those memories. There are a lot of things, small things, probably I wouldn't have told because of the time issue, or I started thinking about some issue somewhere. But anyway, a lot of satisfaction in whatever I did. That's been there. A variety of works I've done. But what is connecting is people, change, empowerment, women. These were always around me. So, and that's how my life has been.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Niveditha.
sharing. Thank you for sharing. And thank you. I don't know who will see this and who will be inspired by this journey and what
Thank
comes
you.
out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.